When the internet was created, it changed how most people live their lives. Eventually, almost everyone I knew started wanting their own computer. After a while, my family decided it was time for us to get one too. So a couple of years back, we bought our first computer. At first, it was like having a brand new toy at home. My wife Laura liked using it to send emails and play games. Our children Ethan and Sophia also played games on it and sometimes used it for their schoolwork. As for me, I often found myself on the computer late at night. I worked a late shift at the factory, finishing at midnight, and I wasn't interested in going out to bars like some of my coworkers did. Being married, I always went straight home after work. By the time I got home, everyone else would be asleep, so I'd spend time on the computer. But after a while, I started to find it repetitive and not as exciting. I never got as hooked on the internet as some people do. I would visit websites that had all kinds of stories to read. Some of the things I read seemed unbelievable. It made me wonder if these stories were real or just made up. I got really into reading stories about wives who cheat on their husbands. It was hard to believe these stories were true, but they made me start thinking differently. I even started watching my wife more closely, worrying about how she acted around other men. For example, if we were out and she danced too close to someone or seemed overly friendly, I'd bring it up later, and it would lead to arguments between us. Even though Lara is attractive, I had no real reason to distrust her. But I found myself doing silly things like checking the laundry for clues or snooping through our emails. Reading those stories had put all these ideas in my head. Eventually, I started reading those stories less often, but the thoughts they sparked in me lingered for a while. I once came across stories about husbands finding their wives with another man and just standing there watching. These stories made me wonder if someone could actually find it exciting to catch their partner with someone else. Given my tendency to get jealous, I couldn't imagine myself feeling thrilled about such a situation. When I shared these thoughts with Lara, my wife, she was puzzled. She questioned why I would even entertain such ideas, reassuring me that she only wanted me. Lara and I first met during our younger years, at her sister's wedding. We hit it off while dancing at the celebration, and soon became close friends. She shared that she was a school teacher, and I told her about my job at the factory. Not long after, we began dating and got married within a year. Our son Ethan arrived the following year, and our daughter Sophia was born 2 years later. Lara's sister Mia, whom I had known from school years before, was known for her free-spirited lifestyle. Although we never dated, Mia's reputation was well known. She was considered to have had many partners, including several from our football team. Mia's husband, Chris, worked as a supervisor on the day shift at the same factory as me. He had since moved to a different location. Chris, much like Mia, had a reputation for being quite unrestrained in his behavior. He was the one who invited me to their wedding. My opinion of Chris was not very high, especially when I suspected he was making advances toward Lara after we got married. Lara believed Chris was just trying to be friendly, as he was our brother-in-law, but I couldn't shake my suspicion. I made it clear to Lara that if Chris ever made a move on her, I would not hesitate to confront him. Lara urged me to relax, assuring me that she was completely committed to me. We both decided not to discuss our past relationships any further, recognizing that such conversations could stir up unnecessary jealousy between us. I didn't like the idea of accidentally meeting someone Lara had been with before. Equally, I wasn't keen on telling her about my past with her sister. By the time our kids, Ethan and Sophia, were 8 and 6 respectively, and both in school, Lara and I were doing okay, aside from the usual couple disagreements. Our work schedules didn't match up well, with me working days and Lara nights, which meant we hardly saw each other. She was home with the kids in the evening, while I was alone during the day. It wasn't ideal for our marriage, but that's just how things were. One morning, as Lara was getting ready for work, she asked if I could help her sister Mia with a leaking kitchen sink, since Mia's husband, Chris, wasn't much of a handyman. Lara made a joke about plumbing that made us both laugh, but she clarified she meant the kitchen sink, not her sister's personal issues. She warned me half-jokingly about the trouble of getting involved with Mia's plumbing. I agreed to fix the sink on my way to work, and after a quick kiss goodbye from Lara, who then took the kids to school, I was left thinking about the task ahead. I remembered hearing rumors that Mia and Chris were into swinging, which didn't surprise me since Mia was quite open about her desire to maintain her figure instead of having children. Despite having 2 children, Lara's figure was just as appealing as Mia's. Mia had made attempts to flirt with me in the past, but I always kept things light and humorous, valuing my marriage too much to take her seriously. Mia once hinted that something might happen between us, which I tried to brush off. She worked part-time at a local grocery store and had taken the day off, knowing I'd be coming over. When I arrived, she greeted me in a suggestive robe and offered coffee before leading me to the problematic sink. It was clear the sink was just clogged, something even Chris could have fixed if he had tried. While I worked on clearing the clog, caused by too many eggshells and potato peels, I thought about how simple the repair was, and how it was being used as an excuse for something more, reflecting on the complexities of family dynamics and the importance of maintaining boundaries. While I was finishing up the repair, Mia positioned herself in a way that was clearly meant to be provocative, not wearing any underwear and making her intentions unmistakably clear. Despite the obvious allure of the situation, I quickly wrapped up my work, gathered my tools, and left for work, feeling a whirlwind of emotions. The potential consequences of Mia's actions weighed heavily on me, making me wonder if she would twist the story to my wife, Lara. I tried to reach Lara to preempt any misunderstanding, but she hadn't returned home yet, so I left her a message expressing my love and hinting at a serious conversation about her sister we needed to have. Despite my best efforts to focus on work, the incident clouded my thoughts, turning an ordinary day into a tangled mess of worry and distraction. I attempted to call home again in the evening without success. Concerned, I reached out to Lara's mother, who informed me Lara was out with Mia and Chris, leaving her to watch the kids. I reassured her mother that everything was fine on my end and requested she pass along my love to Lara, opting to focus on finishing my work shift amidst the turmoil. The wait to confront the situation stretched on, marking one of the longest nights I'd ever endured. The thought of disclosing my past encounter with Mia to Lara loomed large, but I hoped for her understanding, given it occurred before our relationship. Returning home, I noticed Mia's car in the driveway, bracing myself for the confrontation. Upon entering, the scene before me was shocking and far removed from any rational expectation. My wife, along with Mia, Chris, and another woman named Barb, were in a compromising and startling tableau. The atmosphere was charged with a mix of surprise, guilt, and inebriation. Mia seemed amused, Chris appeared unabashed, and Lara looked a mix of frightened and intoxicated. The reality of the moment was starkly different from the fantasies I'd read about online. Unlike those stories, the real-life implications of betrayal and confusion were far from exciting or arousing. Now, faced with the immediate need to address the betrayal and confusion enveloping my family, I had to navigate through this unexpected and painful reality. Seeing my wife in such a compromising situation made me incredibly angry. I couldn't control my temper and ended up physically attacking Chris, striking him multiple times. Amid the chaos and the sound of screaming, which I couldn't identify as coming from Lara or Mia, my focus was solely on Chris. After landing several blows, I suddenly felt a sharp pain on the back of my head and everything went black. When I regained consciousness, I found myself in a hospital room, greeted by the sight of a police officer. The officer introduced himself as Patrolman Gene Andrews and began to explain the situation to me. I was confused and concerned, asking about my whereabouts, my wife's safety, and what had happened to me. Patrolman Andrews explained that I had suffered a concussion due to being hit on the head with a glass vase during a fight at my home. The situation had escalated to the point where the police were called, and I was initially going to be charged with assault. However, the charges were fortunately dropped. I was informed that I was lucky to avoid jail time, which could have been up to 18 months. The officer detailed that the altercation began when I arrived home and attacked my brother-in-law, leading to his wife hitting me with the vase to stop the fight. It was portrayed as a defensive act by them, and they had even dropped the charges against me. When asked about my wife's condition during the incident, the officer mentioned she was found vomiting, likely from excessive drinking, and the situation was described as me becoming aggressive towards her, prompting my brother-in-law to intervene. Feeling overwhelmed and not wanting to expose the personal and embarrassing details of what I had witnessed at home, I chose to remain silent when the officer asked for my statement. Despite the officer's suggestion to reflect on my actions and the implicit gratitude for the dropped charges, I felt a mix of confusion, betrayal, and frustration, unable to articulate my feelings or the truth of the situation. The officer mentioned I would need to stay in the hospital until the next day for observation due to my concussion. Left alone with my thoughts, I was forced to confront the complexity of my emotions and the aftermath of the events, with the stark realization that the public and legal narrative of the incident would be vastly different from my own experience. After the officer left, I was left alone with a throbbing headache and a whirlwind of thoughts about the future. Knowing that I couldn't continue a life with a partner who had been unfaithful, I still felt a pressing need to understand why Lara had acted this way. I arranged for my sister Jenna to pick me up the following morning since I had no other means to get home and definitely did not want Lara to be the one to come for me. During this time of waiting, Lara called me, offering to pick me up and mentioning that we needed to talk because now we were even. Confused and angered by her justification for her actions as making us even, I rejected her offer, explaining that Jenna would be bringing me home to collect some personal items before I left for good. Lara's response, implying that her actions were in retaliation for something she believed I had done, only deepened the rift between us. I ended the call, opting to discuss this in person when I arrived with Jenna, who I asked to stay in the car to avoid dragging her into the conflict. Upon arriving home, Lara was the one to open the door. With the children still at her mother's, we immediately delved into the heart of the matter. Lara had received my phone message, but she had been misinformed by Mia that I had initiated an unwanted encounter with her, which I vehemently denied. I tried to explain that Mia had made advances towards me, which I rejected, and that she threatened to lie about our interaction. Lara refused to believe me, convinced by her sister's lie, thinking that Mia's jealousy of our marriage was implausible as a motive for her actions. I argued that Mia's and Chris's swinger lifestyle was part of a scheme to entangle us in their world, suggesting that Lara's involvement with Chris was orchestrated to break us apart. Lara, however, insisted that her affair was a form of retaliation against what she believed was my assault on her sister. She even claimed Mia knew intimate details about me that she could only know if Mia's claims were true, which I countered by revealing my past high school encounter with Mia, highlighting her promiscuity as the reason for her knowledge. The confrontation revealed a tangled web of deceit, misunderstandings, and retaliations that had poisoned our marriage beyond repair. Lara's insistence on getting even, and the revelations about Mia's manipulations painted a picture of betrayal and mistrust that seemed insurmountable, leading to a profound realization of the extent of the damage done to our relationship. In our relationship, I had a history that I never shared with you because I truly fell in love and feared losing you. When we agreed not to delve into our pasts, I thought we could leave all that behind us. Now I'm caught between disbelief and betrayal. Lara, you're my sister, but you chose to act without even confronting me with these allegations. By becoming involved with Chris under these circumstances, it wasn't just about the act itself, but also about the lack of respect and trust towards me. You didn't even give me a chance to defend myself. If Mia's claims were true, why wasn't the police involved from the start? She claims she wanted to avoid scandal, yet had no issue causing a scene last night. The truth seems clear to me now. Her accusations were baseless. This situation has left me with no choice but to end our marriage. It's incomprehensible to me how you could justify your actions as a response to unverified accusations. Your definition of love surely doesn't align with mine, as mine doesn't include betrayal. I'll be taking some personal items now and will return for the rest when you're not here. I plan to consult a lawyer about divorce proceedings first thing next week. Your plea for me to wait, and your justification that this was all some form of misguided retribution, or that we could somehow move past this, is unfathomable. Your actions, influenced by Mia and Chris, have irrevocably damaged our relationship. I hastily packed a few essentials, unsure of how to explain this to our children. Your actions have left me with little concern for the narrative you choose to share with them. I've decided to coordinate seeing the kids through legal arrangements and will have Jenna facilitate their visits. This is goodbye. Exiting our home, I found temporary refuge in a motel, confiding the entire ordeal to Jenna during the drive. As my sister and confidant, she understood and supported me, offering to help watch over Lara and our children from a distance. The following weeks were challenging as I navigated through the emotional and financial strain of this upheaval, committing to extra work hours to manage the added expenses. This period of my life was marked by the painful but necessary process of moving forward from a deep betrayal. I settled into a modest boarding house, renting by the week, and frequented a local bar and diner for my meals. After consulting with a lawyer about ending my marriage, I learned that although Lara didn't initially want a divorce, she agreed to proceed with whatever I decided. The division of our assets was straightforward. Since we rented our home, Lara took over the lease, and we split our savings and the value of our possessions equally. I was committed to supporting my children financially and emotionally, despite the pain of missing them and Lara. I made an effort to stay involved in my children's lives, attending school events and birthday parties when possible, avoiding any interaction with Lara's family. My conversations with Lara remained civil, limited to discussions about our children or household matters, deliberately steering clear of any personal reconciliation talks. Lara attempted to reach out almost daily during the lead-up to our official separation, but I consistently disengaged whenever the topic shifted to us. During a visit to my sister Jenna's place, where I spent time with my kids, Jenna shared that Mia was still claiming I had acted inappropriately towards her. This ongoing accusation created a rift between Lara and me, as Lara seemed to struggle with whom to believe. The lack of tangible evidence made it a situation of her sister's word against mine, which was incredibly painful, especially knowing Laura sided with Mia. One day, the school called to inform me that my son, Ethan, was feeling unwell, prompting me to pick him up. I notified Laura, who was working at the time, and she assured me she'd come home as soon as possible. After ensuring Ethan was comfortable and monitoring his mild fever, Laura arrived home with our daughter, Sophia, to check on him. Unexpectedly, I answered a call from Mia, having reflexively picked up the phone out of habit. This moment underscored the complex web of personal and familial dynamics I was navigating, balancing my responsibilities as a father with the ongoing challenges of navigating my relationship with Laura and the allegations made by Mia. When Mia called me, asking what I was doing at the house, I responded with a pointed remark about her dishonesty. I explained that I was there because Ethan, our son, was sick. During the call, I discreetly started recording our conversation, knowing that it might capture something significant. Mia expressed a shallow concern for Ethan, which I challenged. Questioning her sincerity given her actions had contributed to our family's breakdown. Mia attempted to justify her actions by revealing their swinger lifestyle and her and Chris's intention to involve my sister Laura in their escapades. She admitted that if I had complied with her advances, the situation might not have escalated. She accused me of starting the conflict and misleading Laura into believing she had been assaulted, which led to Laura's involvement with Chris. Mia defended Chris, claiming Laura's participation was consensual and likely to happen again, dismissing the influence of alcohol and her own role in manipulating the situation. Acknowledging the difficulty of proving her manipulations, Mia smugly noted that Laura would always take her word over mine. After ending the call, I prepared to share the recording with Laura, framing it as a revelation of Mia's true character. Laura inquired about the caller, and I informed her it was Mia, suggesting she listen to the recorded conversation for herself. I mentioned our upcoming court date, referring to it as Freedom Day, and urged her not to forget to listen to the recording. Following this, Laura's repeated attempts to contact me signaled her desperation. When we finally spoke, she expressed remorse, having learned the truth about Mia's deception directly from her. However, I remained firm, feeling betrayed by Laura's decision to believe Mia's allegations over mine, which led to irreparable harm to our family. Determined to finalize the dissolution of our marriage, I signed the necessary documents at my lawyer's office, wanting to avoid any further interaction with Laura. The weight of these events drove me to seek solace at a local bar, where my encounter with Chris turned violent. Overwhelmed by anger and a sense of injustice, I confronted him physically, acting on the pain and betrayal his actions had caused my family. This confrontation was a raw expression of my anguish over the destruction of my family, highlighting the depth of my hurt and the complexities of navigating through betrayal, love, and the pursuit of closure. After the altercation with Chris, the police restrained me, handcuffed, and transported me to jail. During this period, I was granted a single phone call, which I used to inform my sister Jenna of my situation, explicitly instructing her against posting bail due to the anticipated high cost. Jenna was understandably upset as we ended the call. Despite Laura's attempts to visit me in jail, I chose not to meet with her, still feeling deeply wounded by the betrayal and the subsequent unraveling of our family. It took nearly 2 months for my case to proceed to trial, where I faced assault charges and entered a guilty plea, resulting in a 2-year sentence, adjusted for the time I had already spent in custody. I asked Jenna to store my belongings, indicating my resignation to the consequences of my actions. Jenna relayed Laura's regret and her family's disillusionment with Mia's deceit. She also mentioned that Laura hadn't followed through with signing the divorce papers, which meant I was entering prison still legally married. Prison life was as harrowing and isolating as one might imagine, marked by a constant need to assert oneself amidst a population of individuals with nothing left to lose. My cellmate, known ominously as Killer, had a particularly violent history, which made our initial interactions cautious and tense. Despite my efforts to avoid trouble, confrontations were frequent, leading to multiple injuries and a grudging respect from some inmates over time. Surprisingly, one day, the person waiting for me during visiting hours was not Jenna or my father, but Laura. Her presence and emotional state, coupled with her expressions of regret and love, momentarily softened my resolve. She brought photographs of our children, reinforcing the profound disconnect between my current reality and the life I had left behind. Laura's visit underscored the complexity of our situation, her admissions of mistake and ongoing love, juxtaposed against the backdrop of my imprisonment and the decisions that led me here. Despite a fleeting desire for reconciliation, I maintained a distance, prioritizing my children's well-being in my response, a reflection of the enduring love for my family amidst the turmoil and the irreversible changes to my life. Seeing the recent school photos of our children that Lara passed to me stirred a mix of emotions. They looked so happy and innocent, a sharp contrast to the complexity of our adult lives. Lara's confession that she hadn't signed the divorce papers and her willingness to wait for me, regardless of how long it took, put me in a difficult position. She expressed regret over her actions and a hope for reconciliation, assuming I still harbored love for her. While part of me still cared deeply for her, the betrayal and her initial distrust were hard to overlook. Without responding, I returned to my cell, leaving Lara and the conversation behind. Life in prison forced me into situations I never imagined. I learned of a plot against my cellmate, Killer, from conversations overheard in the kitchen. Despite my reluctance to align with any group, I felt compelled to warn him about the impending attack, prioritizing human life over prison politics. Killer's skeptical reaction forced me to leave the decision in his hands, highlighting the risks associated with my intervention. Killer's strategy for dealing with the threat was both ingenious and chilling. By concealing hardcover books under his shirt as makeshift armor, he thwarted the assassination attempt. The confrontation that ensued was brutal but calculated, with Killer's associates quickly neutralizing the attacker until the guards intervened. This incident cemented Killer's reputation and unexpectedly initiated regular conversations between us. Our discussions revealed a side of Killer that was unseen by most. Inside our cell, he shared personal stories, including the estrangement from his children following the tragic events that led to his life sentence. He spoke of his youngest daughter, Elise, who, unlike her siblings, understood his perspective on the family's tumultuous past. These revelations painted a complex portrait of a man condemned by his actions, yet seeking connection and understanding within the confines of his reality. This period of incarceration not only tested my resilience, but also forced me to confront the nuances of human nature, forgiveness, and the possibility of redemption, both in myself and in those around me. Killer's relationship with his daughter Elise illuminated a side of him that prison walls couldn't confine. His decision to shield her from the prison's harsh environment by advising against visits, despite their regular correspondence, showcased his deep love and protective instincts. Learning that she had become a lawyer brought him visible joy, a rare emotion within these confines. Sharing my own tumultuous story with Killer, I confessed the lingering love and resentment towards Lara. Killer's perspective on forgiveness, shaped by his own irreversible actions and the loss of his family, struck a chord with me. His advice to let go of grudges, informed by his own regret, presented a stark choice: to hold on to bitterness or to consider a path towards reconciliation and healing. Lara's subsequent visit brought this dilemma into sharper focus. She brought drawings from our children, visual representations of their unwavering view of us as a united family. Her plea for forgiveness and her commitment to make amends, coupled with the revelation that she had severed ties with Mia and Chris, reopened the question of whether our family could indeed be restored. Her admission of regret and the circumstances leading to her betrayal forced me to confront my own capacity for forgiveness. The memory of finding her with Chris, juxtaposed against her claim of disdain for the act, highlighted the complex interplay of alcohol, vengeance, and remorse that fueled her decision. This conversation at the visitation window, laden with apologies and the raw desire for redemption, left me grappling with the possibility of forgiveness and the challenges of overcoming deep-seated hurt. As I considered Killer's advice and Lara's earnest pleas, the path forward remained uncertain, shadowed by past actions yet illuminated by the potential for forgiveness and a renewed bond with my family. Lara had told me with conviction that I was the only man she ever wanted, emphasizing our connection as parents to our children. This declaration lingered in my thoughts, especially when weeks later, Jenna visited me with unsettling news. She had driven past my house only to witness Mia and Chris entering it, despite Lara's previous assurance that she had cut ties with them. This revelation plunged me into confusion and doubt about Lara's honesty, just when I was leaning towards forgiveness and a fresh start with her. The trust I had in Jenna was solid. She had no reason to deceive me, prompting a whirlwind of questions about Lara's actions and intentions. This situation was complicated further when Killer, my cellmate with a legal background, proposed using his connections to explore the possibility of my early release. Despite the unusual nature of trusting someone with his past, Killer's integrity and intelligence had earned my respect. Killer's plan came to fruition when I was summoned to a parole board meeting. The board's inquiry into my adjustment to prison life and my plans upon release caught me off guard. I shared my sister's offer to provide me with a temporary home and mentioned my uncertain marital status, emphasizing my desire to rebuild my life honestly. The board's response to my candidness and the discussion of potential employment opportunities signaled a critical moment in my journey, highlighting the complexities of navigating personal redemption, the intricacies of human relationships, and the prospect of starting anew amidst ongoing uncertainties. The parole board's concern about the likelihood of my returning to prison if granted early release was evident. They stressed the negative impact such a scenario would have on their decision-making. My response was earnest. The thought of returning to prison was intolerable, and I expressed a sincere desire to rebuild my life on the outside. Grateful for even being considered for early release, I returned to my cell to share the update with Killer. His enigmatic hint at involvement in my potential release, coupled with a lighthearted demand for cigarettes, left the matter intriguingly ambiguous. Laura's subsequent visit, marked by her revelation that the parole board had inquired about our relationship directly at our house, added a layer of complexity to my situation. Her admission of being open to reconciliation was overshadowed by my unresolved doubts, particularly concerning her interactions with Mia and Chris. My interrogation about her recent encounters with Mia and Chris, driven by Jenna's observations, reflected my deep-seated mistrust. Laura's nervous demeanor under questioning confirmed my suspicions, leading me to confront her about the possibility of her rekindling her affair with Chris. Her abrupt departure from the visitor's room only solidified my belief in her deceit, leaving me to grapple with the harsh reality of our fractured relationship amidst the uncertainty of my early release. I was completely ready to face the same challenge that led me to where I am now. I never planned to hurt anyone. My goal was just to give them a big fright. I reached out to my sister Jenna, and she made the trip to come and see me. I shared with her the details of my talk with Laura, and Jenna expressed her sympathy for me. Jenna also mentioned that the parole board had visited her home, and she assured them that I could live with her for as long as necessary. Her husband Kenny was present during this visit, and he too agreed that I was welcome in their home. Then, I wondered if they had spoken to Mr. Parker about my job situation. It turns out they had, and Mr. Parker was willing to give me my old job back, acknowledging that I had been a valuable employee. Jenna's news really lifted my spirits. I was anxious about the possibility of being rejected, but she reassured me. The parole board had informed her that with a secure place to live and a job waiting for me, it was likely I would be released at the start of the next month. Upon hearing this, Jenna couldn't hold back her tears. And she was right. Soon after, I was informed that my release was scheduled for the following week. I was given the contact details of a lawyer who would manage my case post-release. I was puzzled about why I needed to see a lawyer instead of a parole officer. It was explained to me that the law firm had played a role in arranging for my release. They needed to meet with me to process my paperwork, clarify the conditions of my parole, and then direct me to my parole officer. I expressed my gratitude to Killer, and he brought up the topic of cigarettes. I assured him they would be provided. Honestly, I wasn't sure if Killer had influenced my early release, but I believed that providing him with a carton of cigarettes weekly was a small price to pay for my freedom. As I left the prison, Jenna was there waiting for me, tears in her eyes. We shared a hug and a light kiss as siblings. "Welcome back, bro," she said. At Jenna's house, her husband welcomed me warmly, confirming I truly had a place there. Naturally, I inquired about Larrabee. Jenna informed me that after our prison conversation, Larrabee had engaged a lawyer and finalized their separation officially. It appeared my feelings about Laura were accurate. But at that moment, what mattered most was that I was now free. I felt it was very important for me to visit Laura to talk about how I could spend time with our children. Before going, I called her to make sure she was at home. I wanted to avoid any unexpected problems that might cause trouble for me. I tried my best to let her know that I wasn't looking to start any arguments. I even suggested that we could have our conversation outside on the front porch. My main goal was to figure out a way to regularly see my children. Laura agreed to let me visit, but she warned me that she would call the police if I caused any issues. When I got to her house, my children ran up to me, excitedly yelling, "Daddy, Daddy, you're back!" I hugged them tightly, feeling how much I had missed them. After a short chat, I suggested they go ride their bikes while Laura and I talked on the porch. Laura wanted to know what I was there for, reminding me that she didn't see us being a family again. I told her, "Larrabee, we need to move forward. They're my children too, and I want to be a part of their lives." Laura was upset, saying she had been willing to forgive me until I got involved again with Chris and Mia, people she didn't trust. Laura admitted she was lonely while I was in prison, but insisted she would never harm our children. I argued that her actions had already hurt our family and expressed my intention to keep our children away from bad influences. I told her I was planning to see a new lawyer to understand my rights, as I had lost trust in her. Despite Laura claiming she had changed, and realized the lifestyle she tried wasn't for her or the children, I remained skeptical. I stressed that actions are more important than words. I then spent some time talking to my children about their school and activities, telling them I was staying with my sister Jenna, but planned to find a place closer to spend more time with them. After saying goodbye with a hug and a kiss, I returned to Jenna's place. The next day, I went to the law firm that had represented me. It was a strange feeling because I hadn't yet spoken to the lawyer who helped me get released early. As I approached the reception desk, I took out the card I had received from the parole board. "Could I please talk to Mr. A.J. Brady? I have an appointment scheduled." "My name is Ray Harper," I said as soon as I arrived. The receptionist greeted me with a warm smile and said, "Miss Brady will meet with you soon. Please have a seat, Mr. Harper." Her words made me pause for a moment. Did she just say, Miss Brady? I had read the name A.J. Brady on the card and assumed it was a man's name. I sat there, a bit confused, until a woman with a striking presence approached me. She was dressed in a navy blue suit, and her smile revealed charming dimples. Her dark, shoulder-length hair and overall appearance caught my attention immediately. As she extended her hand towards me, she introduced herself. "Ray Harper, I presume? I'm A.J. Brady. Although we haven't met before, I've been asked to review your case, or rather, your situation, and I believe you weren't given a fair defense." She then requested that we move to her office for privacy, asking her assistant Mary to hold all her calls. I was so taken by her presence and gratitude towards her that I felt I would have followed her anywhere, even over a cliff. Inside her office, she began to discuss my case. She insisted I call her Ray, sharing that a good friend had brought my case to her attention. She criticized my previous lawyer for advising me to plead guilty without presenting any mitigating circumstances, such as my recent divorce and the emotional turmoil I was under at the time. These factors, she argued, could have led to a more lenient sentence despite my guilty plea for assault. Curious, I asked her why she decided to help me and who had asked her to look into my case. I also expressed my desire to call her something more personal than Miss Brady, as I felt a deep sense of gratitude towards her for giving me a second chance at life. AJ explained that the details of who asked her to help were not as important as the fact that she did help. She allowed me to call her AJ, which made our interaction more personal. It then dawned on me that a friend I made in prison, known as Killer, had mentioned his daughter Elise, who was a lawyer. This revelation made me realize the connection and the incredible turn of events that led to my early release. I started to connect the dots and wondered aloud if the wonderful daughter Killer, or rather Vincent, had mentioned was actually her. My lawyer, with a sparkle in her eyes, confirmed directly, "Yes, Killer. I mean Vincent, that's my father's name. He asked me to take a closer look at your situation. It's the first time he's ever made such a request, which means he must have thought highly of you." I was taken aback by her father's request, but also touched by her willingness to help me because of her father. I ventured to ask, "AJ, may I call you Elise? I feel it's too formal to call you AJ, especially since you're not just my lawyer, but also someone very special because of how we met. And Miss Brady just doesn't seem right either. By the way, what does AJ stand for?" She revealed her full name, Angelina Juanita Brady, explaining that it was the reason she preferred to go by AJ. Changing the subject, Elise suggested that we discuss more over lunch, making it clear it wasn't a date, but rather an opportunity for a meal together before she had to return to work. I playfully suggested that if it wasn't a date, I could pay, turning it into a business meeting, since professionals do have lunch with clients occasionally. Elise agreed with a smile, her dimples making her joy evident. It was clear why her father had taken a liking to me. She was not only attractive, but also had a vibrant personality, a combination not always found in lawyers. We chose a quiet restaurant for lunch, where she briefed me on the next steps with my parole officer, emphasizing the importance of adhering to the rules and keeping out of trouble. I would need to meet with him regularly, starting with bi-monthly visits. Curiosity about Elise's own life led me to ask her to share more about herself, considering how much she knew about me. However, she maintained a professional boundary, suggesting it wasn't appropriate to delve into personal matters. Despite this, I couldn't help but express my admiration for her, telling her she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen. "I really like seeing your smile and those dimples," I told Elise. She gently reminded me, "Ray, as I've said, I don't get involved with clients, but thanks for the kind words." Despite trying to keep a professional demeanor, I could see she was slightly flustered by the compliment. I decided to steer the conversation towards her professional background, suggesting it was relevant to me as her client. She managed to hide her amusement before sharing, "Okay, Ray, I earned my law degree on a scholarship from the university. I've been practicing law for a few years, focusing on criminal law." As we started to eat the lunch that had just arrived, my mind kept circling back to Elise. I couldn't resist asking if we would meet again. She informed me that I needed to return the following week to complete some paperwork regarding my parole. Seizing the opportunity, I suggested another lunch meeting, promising to pay this time. Elise seemed to warm up to the idea, agreeing to a lunch that would focus strictly on business matters, though she couldn't suppress her smile. After we finished our meal and returned to her office, our goodbye was marked by a brief but meaningful handshake. Holding her hand a moment longer than necessary, I pondered what she might be thinking of me, hoping she didn't consider me odd. We exchanged goodbyes, and I expressed my eagerness for our next lunch. The receptionist caught this exchange and smiled, perhaps unused to seeing such interactions in their office. But Elise wasn't just any lawyer. Her presence was unique. Returning to work felt incredibly uplifting. It was as if nothing had changed, and yet everything had. My colleagues treated me with a new level of respect, and it seemed easy to fall back into the routine, much like riding a bike. Over the next 2 weeks, I had appointments with Elise, during which she maintained a professional stance. But my curiosity about her grew. By our fourth meeting, Elise informed me that we had concluded our formal business dealings. I questioned whether she would still represent me if needed, to which she affirmed that she was always just a phone call away. It was then, with a mix of jest and seriousness, that I told her I might have to fire her, hinting at changing the nature of our relationship beyond the professional boundaries she had set. I felt really apologetic when I mentioned wanting to fire Elise. She was taken aback, unable to grasp why I would say such a thing, especially after all her help, and for which she hadn't charged me. I clarified, saying that since she mentioned not dating clients, I figured if I wasn't her client, we could go on a real date. I wanted to take her out for a nice dinner and possibly dancing, to genuinely learn more about each other. Despite my past as an ex-convict and current job at a factory, I felt there was a chance for us to connect on a deeper level. I sensed she might feel the same, given she had insisted on meeting in person for things that could have been communicated over the phone. Elise was hesitant, admitting a slight attraction, but concerned about the optics of dating someone with my background. I reassured her that what mattered was not others' opinions, but how we felt about each other. I persuaded her to follow her heart and go out with me on Saturday night. Although apprehensive due to my recent release from prison, I was open to exploring where this might lead. Elise, with some reluctance, agreed to one date, explicitly stating her boundaries up front, which took her by surprise to even vocalize. On that Saturday, I made sure everything was perfect, borrowing my sister's car to make a good impression. Elise lived in a townhouse, and when she opened the door, I was taken aback by her beauty, feeling an immediate desire to be close to her, yet knowing I needed to show restraint. We chose a sophisticated restaurant, enjoying wine and dinner followed by a conversation set against the backdrop of soft music. I was eager to learn about Elise's life, asking about her upbringing and noting the difference in our last names, which hinted at a story there. Elise shared a bit about her family, revealing that her parents had a troubled relationship, which led to her father's imprisonment. She and her siblings were raised by their aunts and uncles, offering a glimpse into the resilience and complexities of her family life. I am the youngest sibling in my family, and I was just 14 years old when everything changed drastically for us. It was a very challenging time for my brother, sister, and me. My siblings have struggled with their feelings towards our dad. They love him deeply, but they find it hard to forgive him for what happened. I was the one who discovered that our mom was being unfaithful to dad. When I tried to talk to her about it, she dismissed me, saying I was too young to understand adult matters. Despite her response, I felt compelled to tell my dad what I knew. Not long after, he caught her in the act with another man. This incident led me to feel guilty, wondering if I had remained silent. Maybe things would have been different. But Elise, you have to realize that you weren't to blame for the subsequent events, your mom's passing and your dad's legal troubles. They were the adults in the situation. You were just a child trying to navigate a complex family issue. Following my dad's imprisonment, I made a decision to pursue a legal education. I wanted to become a lawyer with the hope that I might be able to assist my dad in some way, perhaps secure a reduction in his sentence. That's why I chose to specialize in criminal law. My dad, who was quite an accomplished lawyer himself, expressed his pride in my achievements, although, realistically, there wasn't much I could do to change his situation. Curious about her personal life, I asked Elise if she had been married before. She confirmed she had, but quickly noted that it was a brief marriage and not really my concern, though she did so with a smile. She suggested we postpone further discussion on such topics, preferring not to dampen the mood of our evening together, which she was enjoying. Elise then asked if I'd like to dance. Despite not being the best dancer, I saw it as an opportunity to be close to her. We asked the band to play some slow songs, and as we danced, I felt a connection to her, drawn in by her presence and the fragrance of her hair. Elise shared with me her general wariness towards men, a sentiment shaped by her professional interactions. She admitted that had it not been for her father directing her to assist me, she likely wouldn't have agreed to spend the evening together. This made me appreciate even more the unique circumstances that brought us together, prompting me to jokingly say I owed her dad an extra carton of cigarettes for this. I expressed to Elise how significant she had become in my life, considering her the most wonderful thing that had ever happened to me. I made a promise to Elise that I'd do anything necessary to gain her trust, assuring her that if I ever crossed a line, she could tell me, and I would respect her boundaries. When I dropped her off after our date, I couldn't resist giving her a kiss at her doorstep. To my surprise, she kissed me back, creating a moment of silent connection between us. I asked if I could come inside, but she felt it was too soon for such a step, suggesting we take things slowly. Yet, she didn't dismiss the idea of us going out again, asking me to call her later in the week. Feeling elated, I returned home, and true to her word, we went out again on the next Saturday and the one after that. Each date allowed us to open up more about ourselves. Elise shared a deeply personal part of her history with me. She revealed that she had been married briefly during her first year of college, a relationship that had quickly escalated due to a pregnancy and led to a marriage that didn't last. The marriage ended following a miscarriage, a heartbreaking event that made them realize they were too young and had rushed into things. Elise chose to keep the Brady surname, a decision influenced by her father to help distance her from the stigma associated with his last name, Miller. Hearing her share these intimate details made me feel closer to her, and I appreciated her honesty and openness. Our conversation shifted to my children, who were curious about Elise and eager to meet her. I mentioned a family barbecue we were planning and invited her, hoping she would feel comfortable enough to meet my family. This invitation was a significant step for us, signaling a deeper level of commitment and acceptance. Elise hesitated, understanding the importance of this gesture. After a moment of contemplation, she kissed me, a sign of her growing feelings and willingness to move forward with us. She agreed to come to the barbecue, asking what she could bring, a question that left me unsure since I hadn't thought about the specifics. I decided to have my sister Jenna reach out to Elise with details about the cookout. When I shared with Jenna that Elise would be joining us, the news excited the family, and suddenly more relatives were interested in attending, making it clear that this event was turning into a significant family gathering, marking a new chapter in our relationship. Everyone in my family was eager to meet Elise, the new person who had become so important in my life. My parents, along with various cousins, aunts, and uncles, had all expressed their interest in coming to the barbecue to see her. Elise had offered to bring potato salad to the event, and Jenna shared with me how pleasant Elise had been on the phone. It seemed like Jenna was rooting for us, and I certainly hoped for the best. On the weekends when I wasn't visiting Elise, I would pick up my kids, Ethan and Sophia, from their mom, Laura's house. We'd spend time at Jenna's place or go out for activities. I enjoyed these moments and occasionally asked the kids about their mom, careful to keep the conversation positive. Ethan mentioned that Laura had been seeing someone, which initially concerned me until Sophia explained the man was a schoolteacher named Pat, who also coached soccer. Curious, I spoke to Laura about him. She shared that Pat was a widower, having lost his wife to leukemia, and had moved here with his daughter to start anew. Laura assured me she was trying to make better choices, and I advised her to be honest and faithful in her new relationship, unlike what had happened with us. Laura acknowledged the pain her actions had caused, but expressed hope for my happiness and belief in my good character. After our conversation, I returned to my new apartment, which I had chosen for its proximity to Laura and the kids, and for its extra bedroom for their visits. I still visited Jenna regularly, enjoying the family time and meals together. As the barbecue day arrived, I was a bundle of nerves, waiting anxiously for Elise. Seeing her car approach lifted my spirits immediately. She greeted me with a warm smile and handed me a bowl of the potato salad she had made, insisting I try some. Elise looked stunning as always, reinforcing my belief that she couldn't look anything but beautiful. Being with her filled me with a sense of joy and comfort, making me optimistic about our future together. I was starting to realize that my feelings for Elise were deeper than I had initially thought. Even though our relationship had only involved simple gestures of affection, like kissing, there was something about her that made me feel like I was truly falling in love. I hoped she felt something for me, too. During the family barbecue, I introduced Elise to everyone as a close friend, but the way my parents and sister reacted to her made it clear they saw her as much more. When Elise met my parents, she greeted them warmly with a hug, which they reciprocated enthusiastically. My dad even commented in front of her, encouraging me not to let Elise go because they felt a connection to her despite barely knowing her. This moment made me hopeful about our relationship. Elise surprised me by revealing she had met my sister Jenna during her work to secure my early release from prison. She explained she hadn't mentioned it earlier because it hadn't come up, but she felt it was important to be honest with me now. Elise had spoken not just with Jenna, but also with other key people in my life, including my ex-wife Lara, my boss, and even the police, all in her professional capacity to help me. Her admission about falling for me, despite the professional context of our initial interactions, took me by surprise. Elise's willingness to be open about her actions and feelings only deepened my affection for her. When she offered to leave if I was uncomfortable with her revelations, I couldn't help but respond with a kiss, making it clear her feelings were reciprocated. After introducing Elise to more of my family, I excused myself to pick up my children, Ethan and Sophia, who were eager to meet her. Upon our return, Sophia immediately took to Elise, asking if she was my girlfriend and complimenting her beauty, echoing my own words. Elise warmly responded, allowing Sophia to call her Elise or AJ, and expressed her pleasure at meeting her. Sophia then introduced her brother, Ethan, who was a bit shy but managed to greet Elise politely. This series of introductions and interactions at the barbecue highlighted the growing connections and acceptance between Elise and my family, setting the stage for a future where she could potentially become an integral part of our lives. Elise made a point to kneel down to be at eye level with Ethan and Sophia, which showed me just how much she wanted to connect with them. Watching them interact, it was clear that they were quickly becoming friends. Ethan, who usually kept to himself, even told me how much he liked Elise, noting her kindness and beauty. This moment was special to me, seeing Elise bond with my children and receiving their approval. The barbecue went exceptionally well, and as it was winding down, Ethan and Sophia approached Elise and me with a request. They were excited about our planned trip to the amusement park and wondered if Elise could join us. They thought it would be nice for me to have someone to talk to while they enjoyed the rides. I gently told Ethan that such questions should be asked privately, considering Elise might have other plans or might not enjoy amusement parks. Ethan immediately apologized to Elise, concerned he had assumed incorrectly about her interests. Elise, with a laugh, reassured him and explained that it's usually best to discuss such things privately before extending an invitation. She then delighted the kids by saying she actually loved amusement parks and would be thrilled to join us, even suggesting she and Ethan could tackle the roller coaster together. True to her word, Elise joined us for the amusement park visit, participating enthusiastically in the rides with both Ethan and Sophia. The day was a hit, and on our way home, Sophia suggested I should consider buying a car to accommodate everyone more comfortably, highlighting that it wasn't fair for Elise to always use her car. This comment sparked laughter among us, though Sophia did have a valid point. The following weeks were busy for both Elise and me, with work and court commitments limiting our time together. Though we managed a few phone conversations, it wasn't quite the same as being together in person. On one occasion, Sophia expressed a desire to invite Elise to join us at Chuck E. Cheese, a kid-friendly pizza place with games and prizes. Wanting to make Sophia happy, I agreed to call Elise and invite her. When I reached out, Elise mentioned she had plans with friends, reminding me of the balance we both were trying to maintain between our personal lives and our growing connection. When Elise mentioned she had plans, I was about to let her go, but she insisted on speaking to Sophia after hearing she had a question. Despite only hearing my side of the conversation, it was clear Sophia was eager to share our plans to visit Chuck E. Cheese for a fun day of pizza and games, hoping Elise could join us. To my surprise, Elise agreed to come, even though she initially said she had other plans. Sophia was thrilled, telling me Elise would arrive soon, and had even mentioned the car situation again, suggesting a more practical solution for our outings. Elise also shared that she missed spending time with us. After our outing, where Elise's knack for arcade games won the kids several prizes, I took them back to their mom. That evening, Elise and I had a significant conversation about taking our relationship to a deeper level, discussing trust and the importance of being gentle and respectful toward each other. We spent the night together, exploring our feelings more intimately than before, focusing on mutual respect and care. The next morning, I prepared French toast, and Elise joined me for breakfast wearing one of my t-shirts, looking effortlessly beautiful. Our conversation then shifted to what the future might hold for us. Elise, recognizing the depth of my feelings and the affection my family had for her, asked me about my hopes for us. Despite the relatively short time we'd known each other and our recent step forward in our relationship, I expressed a desire to have her in my life every day, highlighting the strong bond we'd formed and my hopes for our future together. After sharing a moment of closeness, I playfully suggested we could spend more time together in the bedroom if we hadn't had enough time together yet. Elise couldn't help but smile at my comment. Feeling overwhelmed by my feelings for her, I took a deep breath and asked Elise if she would marry me. Her response was filled with emotion. She had tears in her eyes as she agreed, emphasizing how seriously she takes love due to a past mistake she once made. Elise promised to always be there for me and the kids, to always be honest and faithful, and she expected the same commitment from me. We shared a passionate kiss, but I noticed a mix of emotions in her expression. She explained that she was thinking about her father and how she had always imagined being walked down the aisle by him on her wedding day, a dream that now seemed out of reach due to his circumstances. She regretted that her father wasn't aware of her first marriage until it was too late, making her current happiness bittersweet. However, Elise quickly shifted focus back to our future together, expressing happiness about marrying someone her father respects and admitting she had loved me from the moment we met. Her confession took me by surprise, and we shared a moment of mutual admiration. We agreed to get married as soon as possible and began making plans, deciding on a date just 2 months away. I was ecstatic in the days that followed, sharing the news with Jenna, Kenny, and then with my kids, who were thrilled about the upcoming wedding and expressed their fondness for Elise. Their excitement made the moment even more special. I also visited Elise's office, where her receptionist, Mary, congratulated me on the engagement. Mary mentioned that Elise had been sharing our happy news with everyone and had extended an invitation to the wedding reception to all her colleagues. This period was a whirlwind of joy and anticipation as we looked forward to starting our new life together. When I arrived at Elise's office, her receptionist told me I could go straight in to see her. Elise was visibly upset with tears in her eyes. Concerned, I asked her what was wrong. She shared with me that she had called the prison warden to inquire if her father could be granted a one-day leave to attend our wedding. Unfortunately, the warden explained that her father's life sentence meant he couldn't leave the prison for any reason, and the decision was out of his hands. Elise's distress grew as she revealed more bad news. Her father had cancer, which had previously been in remission but had now returned. The doctors estimated he had 3 to 6 months left. This news deeply saddened me, and I hugged her, wishing I could do something to ease her pain. Trying to offer some comfort, I mentioned that I had been buying cigarettes for her father since my release from prison, as part of a deal we made. Elise clarified that her dad no longer smoked. Instead, he used the cigarettes to barter with other inmates and assured me that I hadn't contributed to his illness. Despite feeling helpless, an idea began to form in my mind, though I chose not to share it with Elise right away to avoid getting her hopes up. After reassuring her of my support, I decided to take action the following day. I took a day off work and went to the prison to discuss my idea with both her father, whom everyone called Killer, and the warden. Killer initially hesitated at my suggestion, but eventually agreed, under the condition that the warden approved. During my meeting with the warden, I shared my proposal to hold our wedding at the prison chapel, allowing Killer to be part of the ceremony and walk his daughter down the aisle. The warden was surprised by the request, understanding the significance of the gesture and the emotional importance for Elise, who hadn't seen her father in over 14 years, especially now that he was facing a serious illness. I discussed with the prison warden the possibility of using the chapel for our wedding, mentioning that I was aware of other prisoners who had been married on the premises. The warden was accommodating, agreeing to arrange the ceremony within the prison, but specified that it had to be a small event. We were allowed to invite just 3 guests from outside the prison, in addition to myself and Elise. He also mentioned that Killer could have a few inmate friends attend, and that we would need to use the prison's minister for the ceremony. Grateful, I thanked the warden and went to share the news with Killer, also known as Vincent. Vincent chuckled at the use of his name and was touched by the arrangement. Before I left to tell Elise the good news, Vincent provided me with details of a bank account he had set aside for Elise, advising that she would need her birth certificate to access it since it was under her maiden name. I noted down the details, expressed my sadness about his health, and assured him of my commitment to Elise's well-being. Returning to Elise's office, my excitement was evident. When I proposed the idea of getting married in the prison chapel so her father could be part of the ceremony, Elise was initially shocked, but then overwhelmed with emotion at the prospect of her father walking her down the aisle, leading to tears of joy. I also shared the information about the bank deposit box Vincent had mentioned. Together, we went to the bank, where Elise identified herself and was granted access to her safe deposit box. Inside, we found a heartfelt note from her father, expressing his hope that she was accessing the box for a joyful reason, such as her wedding, rather than his passing. The note revealed that the box contained her mother's wedding ring, which Vincent had saved for Elise, along with bonds worth over $15,000 to help cover wedding expenses. He had made these arrangements before his incarceration and mentioned that there were similar boxes for her siblings. This discovery was not only a significant financial help, but also a deeply emotional moment for Elise, connecting her with her parents in a profound and unexpected way as we prepared to start our new life together. Elise and I spent time discussing our wedding plans, deciding to keep the ceremony intimate by inviting her siblings, Brad and Lisa, and my sister Jenna, to join us at the prison chapel. For the larger circle of family and friends, we planned a reception to celebrate with everyone after the ceremony. Elise and Jenna took charge of organizing the reception, managing to put together a beautiful event despite the short notice and the extra costs involved. Jenna volunteered to document the day with her digital camera, ensuring we'd have memories to cherish. When Elise and I visited her brother and sister to extend the wedding invitation, it was a moment filled with mixed emotions. Elise shared the reason behind our unique wedding venue choice and broke the news of their father's illness. Both Brad and Lisa were moved, especially when they learned about the safe deposit boxes their father had prepared for them, just like he had done for Elise. They expressed a complex mix of feelings towards their father, distinguishing their love for him from their feelings about his actions. On the wedding day, Elise and I, accompanied by Jenna and her husband, made our way to the prison. I brought a suit for Killer, ensuring he'd look his best to walk his daughter down the aisle. Dressed in my rented tuxedo, I felt a mix of nerves and excitement. Jenna assisted Elise with her wedding dress in a separate room, upholding the tradition that the groom shouldn't see the bride before the ceremony. As I waited in the chapel, Brad and Lisa joined me, taking on the roles of best man and maid of honor, respectively. The atmosphere in the chapel was lifted by the sound of piano music, played by an inmate, adding a sense of normalcy and celebration to our unconventional wedding venue. The day was shaping up to be a heartfelt celebration of love and family, bringing together those closest to us in a place that, under the circumstances, meant so much to Elise. It was a day filled with the promise of new beginnings and the healing of old wounds as we prepared to start our life together with the blessings of those we loved most. On our wedding day inside the prison chapel, a sense of unity and emotion enveloped the room as 5 inmates, friends of Elise's father Vincent, were escorted in and seated by a guard. The atmosphere was surprisingly warm, further brightened by the warden's gesture of arranging for cake and punch for the celebration after the ceremony. His kindness made me rethink my impressions of him. As the pianist played the traditional wedding march, "Here Comes the Bride," everyone stood up in anticipation. The chapel doors opened, revealing Elise, radiant and emotional, escorted down the aisle by her father. This moment was everything Elise had hoped for, fulfilling her dream of having her father by her side on her wedding day. The sight of them together, both shedding tears of joy, was incredibly moving. When they reached the front of the chapel, Vincent proudly announced he was giving Elise away to me, a moment that felt deeply significant given their strained past. The minister then led Elise and me through our vows, emphasizing the commitment to love and honor each other forever. This promise felt especially poignant, considering the challenges we both had faced in life. After exchanging our vows and sharing our first kiss as a married couple, Elise turned to embrace her father, a gesture filled with love and gratitude. The ceremony concluded with a small gathering in an adjacent room, where we shared cake and punch, courtesy of the warden. It was a simple yet heartfelt celebration, marking the start of our new life together. Brad and Lisa approached their father for the first time in nearly 15 years, sharing an emotional reunion. The room was filled with tears, both of happiness and regret, as they reconciled with their father, knowing his time was limited. They wanted to ensure he knew they still loved him, despite everything. Throughout the ceremony, Jenna captured these tender moments with her camera, preserving memories of a day that brought together family, love, and forgiveness in a way none of us could have anticipated. Our wedding was not just a union between Elise and me, but a moment of healing and closure for her family. Jenna captured every precious moment of Vincent spending time with his children during the wedding, their tears, hugs, and even the moments of laughter they shared. Right after the ceremony, she and her husband rushed to a 24-hour photo center to develop all the pictures they had taken, ensuring we had these memories preserved, including enlarging some of the most special shots. After sharing heartfelt goodbyes with Vincent and expressing our gratitude to the warden for his role in making the day possible, we observed Brad and Lisa still deeply engaged in conversation with their father. It was heartwarming to witness their reconnection. Leaving the prison behind, we headed to the reception in town, where every guest we had invited was waiting to celebrate with us. The first to greet us were Ethan and Sophia, our joy embodied in their excited jumps and embraces. The entrance to the hall was filled with cheers and tears from friends and family alike, including many of Elise's friends whom I was meeting for the first time, as well as Mary, who joined in with a warm hug. Jenna arrived soon after, bringing the developed photos, including a few enlarged ones, and laid them out for everyone to see. It wasn't long before Brad and Lisa arrived with their own families, introducing their children to the photo of their grandfather, Vincent. Jenna announced she had prepared 4 sets of photos so that each family, including ours and hers, could take a set home, preserving these moments forever. During the reception, I couldn't help but marvel at how stunning Elise looked in her wedding dress. She appeared ethereal, like an angel sent from above, capturing the essence of beauty and grace. I felt a profound sense of pride and joy knowing she was my wife, a feeling I imagined many husbands share about their brides. The reception was filled with dancing, laughter, and the frequent sound of glasses clinking, prompting kiss after kiss. Our guests continuously remarked on my good fortune to have found someone like Elise, though I needed no reminders. I was fully aware of how lucky I was to have her in my life, celebrating our love surrounded by family and friends on this unforgettable day. I felt like I had won the greatest prize of all, and was determined to cherish it for the rest of my life. For anyone curious, Laura and Pat were not present at our wedding. The day belonged to Elise, and I wanted nothing to interfere with her happiness. The sight of her walking down the aisle with her father, her brother and sister reconciling with him, and witnessing our families unite was something I would always hold dear. This day was unforgettable in every sense. 6 months have passed since that remarkable day. Laura and Pat tied the knot last month, and it's been heartening to see her making efforts to build a stable life. According to my kids, Pat has been good to them, which is comforting to hear. They also mentioned that Aunt Sue and Uncle Chris have relocated to another state. To spend more time with my children and evenings with Elise, I switched to the day shift at work. Elise and I were expecting our first child together, a piece of joyful news that came 3 months following our wedding. Sadly, Vincent, known to many as Killer, passed away not long after we shared the news of Elise's pregnancy with him. His children had been visiting him monthly until he died. Though it was a difficult time, we managed to tell him about the baby, revealing it would be a boy named David Raymond, which brought a smile to his face. Reflecting on everything that's transpired, from enduring heartbreak and my time in prison, to finding true love with Elise and starting a new chapter together as parents, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude. Every day, I give thanks for the blessings in my life, especially for the second chance at happiness that Elise and I have been given. It's a reminder of the unexpected ways life can unfold, leading to newfound joy and fulfillment.